Hello everyone, how y'all doing? Welcome to another video log. I just spent the last couple of days, night and half a day, trying to get MiSTer working. MiSTer was working fine off the box. Just had to plug in HDMI cable, plug it into the power. Did need to have a converter for British power or whatever to normal European power, but I did have one lying around, so that was fine. Just standard connect the Ethernet cable, MDMI, HDMI to the TV. I got an old Mac keyboard that I just plugged in. Managed to play a couple of games in it. Was working fine. Great. Then I wanted to add collection of old Amiga stuff, which was about 6 gigabytes, and the card that came with the thing was only 8 gigabytes. So I was running out of space, and I figured I should probably, try to find an SD card that is slightly bigger and just, copy stuff from one to the other. How hard could it be? Just clone an 8 gigabyte card to a 32 gigabyte card, and the extra space, still be able to use it freely for whatever. For some reason, there was no way to clone a card directly, at least not on the MiSTer, even though it has 2 SD card slots. Still have to investigate a little bit more why it doesn't have that functionality. To me, it seems a bit obvious, but maybe there's like some structural reason why you can't access those in that way. Anyways, what I was suggested and read on the internet was to just format the new card and install the new card there. Sure, why not? So I had to download something called mr.fusion. mr.fusion 2.2 image is what creates the SD card structure for the MiSTer overall. I had to also download SD card format. Actually, I already had SD card formatter installed, but I was still using Windows Disk Management to delete stuff. But some people recommend SD card formatter to do that. Like there's like an official SD card formatter thing made by this global association where you can use it to format SD cards. And yeah, it does its job. So I had to get something then that would flash the image from mr.fusion into the SD card. You can use Win32 Disk Imager, which was what I was using earlier on. Then later on, after some issues, some people recommended balenaEtcher instead, and balenaEtcher is a lot cleaner. Both of them seem to do pretty much the same thing, but by cleaner I mean better looking in terms of graphic design look. I don't know. You can use whatever you want. When you're flashing, you have to play whack-a-mole with the Windows file system that keeps asking you if you want to format the stuff that you're currently flashing something else into. It just realizes that, oh, this partition changed. It's now empty. You should format it before you don't have access. And you keep having to say, cancel, I don't want to format. And then it says, oh, you don't have access to the thing. Yes, I know, I'm formatting it. And you click OK. You have to click like 5 different windows or prompts to just say, just let me flash the damn thing that I want to flash. It's Windows' fault, not the program's fault. Windows decides to automatically ask you stupid questions. I wonder actually that could probably be disabled by that default thing. I have to look into that, especially if I'm going to flash a few more of these cards at some point. Anyways, once you're done flashing mr.fusion into the SD card, you just need to turn off MiSTer, remove the old SD card, insert the new SD card into the main SD. Don't use the secondary SD, that won't work. You need to be on the main SD for it to boot from the main SD. That's the only place it boots from. The secondary is only for extra disk space, but people did recommend me to have everything on the same SD card, which is just better overall because some cores expect it to be on the main card and the access to the other one might not be as good. That's what I vaguely heard. It could be wrong. Maybe it would have been smarter if I just didn't care and put all the game stuff on the other one. I don't know. Anyways, trying to get a bigger flash card working on the MiSTer. So you plug that in, you boot it up, power the power thing back on, and mr.fusion screen shows up, tells you that it's installing everything. After a few minutes, it's done. It reboots itself, soft reboot, and you have the normal access screen that you had before. You can run some scripts, do some updates, all that stuff, and then suddenly the background started looking a bit weird, and I tried to run a core and it wasn't running, and then I decided to reboot the thing because reset wasn't really doing anything to help it, so I did unplugged the power, plugged it back in, and the MiSTer wouldn't work. The fan would start spinning, but the lights wouldn't blinking. So I'm like, okay. That was fast to destroy my new toy. Tried it, unplug it, plug it back in. Nothing. Okay. Unplug it, try the old SD card back. It's working. Okay, cool. I didn't ruin MiSTer. That's good. That's good. So why isn't the old card working? So I tried it again. Still not working. That's interesting. I just updated it. I just installed it. Why wouldn't it be working? This doesn't make any sense. So I put it back on the PC, test it again, and it's read-only by reasons that I can't quite understand. I check this kit. It fixes the read-only. So I think, oh, fine. It was just an error, corruption of some sort. Put it back on the MiSTer. Still doesn't boot. Okay. So went back to the computer. Format it again, flash it again in slightly different settings. Instead of using FAT32, I used exFAT. See if that makes any difference. Went through the whole process again. Still same thing. It updates mr.fusion, does its thing. Once it's done doing its thing, if I remove the power and plug it back on, it doesn't do anything, doesn't boot. It's like it doesn't have an SD card. It's exactly the same behavior as if you didn't have any SD card on the SD card slot. So looking up on the internet says that I should have the console USB cable connected to my PC so I can debug what's happening on the MiSTer directly and have a sense of what's happening with the card itself. So yeah, that seems easy. Just need to find a USB cable for that, and I try to get a USB mini, and of course it's not a USB mini, it's a USB micro, but I always get those two mixed up. I never know which one is mini, which one is micro. Micro is the one that I always think that it's mini. So I used one of those here, and then I collected to my PC, and I need to know which COM port it uses so I can connect through it through PuTTY. But when I go to device manager, it says that device is not recognized. Well, that sucks. Look it up on the internet. Why is my UART cable not being recognized? Turns out you need to manually install drivers for a virtual cable from the FTDI website, ftdichip.com. There's this thing called VCP, Virtual COM Driver. Virtual COM port. Yeah, that's the name. Virtual COM port. Fine. I installed that, and now it's recognized. Awesome. Configure PuTTY to do its connection, and I boot it on the new card. Silence. Complete silence. Nothing shows up on PuTTY. The connection seems to be on. It doesn't give any complaint that it's off, but it just isn't sending any information. I tried it with the working card, the original one, and it does send a lot of information. So that's interesting. Okay, so PuTTY is connecting. Just the MiSTer says absolutely nothing when it's turned on, but there's no card on. I assume it's plug and play the SD card so that like they detect if a card is putting in, and when it detects, it does magic somehow. I'm old school. I'm of the school that if you don't unplug your stuff before you put cards in, you risk damaging them. So I always remove the power on MiSTer and before I remove the card in or out. So I flash it again, brand new MiSTer.Fusion install, and I do see MiSTer.Fusion information showing up on UART, which is very interesting to have. So I have that debug information, that it does its job and it's partitioning it as it's supposed to be. So after Linux does its magic changing partitions, if I reboot, hard reboot, need to disconnect the power and put it back on, not just doing a reset, it will not boot up again. So I reach out to Discord people of MiSTer and explain my situation, and they tell me that, well, they recommend a few the SD card formatter thing that might be better than the disk imager, and that might be an issue. Also, that I should use balenaEtcher instead of Win32 disk imager, because that also was source of some issues for some people. So I did that, still no go. Some people say that it might be the card that is fake. There is a thing with SD cards that some manufacturers claim that it's this size, but it's actually not that size. It just says that it's that size. When you actually try to reach that size, you start having corruption problems. So the tool to test that is called F3, which stands for Fight Flash Fraud, which seems like a great tool and very nifty to use, but it's in Linux, and my computer is Windows, and I'm all out of Linuxes in this house for now. I don't really want to install a new Linux thing. I do read on the F3 site that there is instructions for using Docker. Now, Docker, for those who don't know, is some sort of containment thing for applications, services, so that you can reuse them regardless of the operating system that you're on. Theoretically, that sounds awesome. When you put it on the cloud, that's great. In practical terms, there's also always some functionality that doesn't quite work on the operating system that you're trying to make it work on. And I had that issue before with Windows in particular. So I was very weary of going Windows Docker to try to get a Linux doing something. But hey, how hard can it be? Let's give it a try. So I install Docker, go through the whole process, get the image, put it working. The image can't access the USB port. Okay, so read the fine print on F3, and it describes the Docker process very well, but all of it is described for Linux. Why would you want to use Docker on Linux if you already have Linux? I don't know, but some people apparently really love to use Docker for everything instead of doing stuff on their own Linux machine. Anyways, so it says fine print for Windows. Actually, for Mac, it says for Mac. I tested this with Docker machine instead of Docker. I have no clue what a Docker machine is, or how it differs from Docker. I just tried typing the command, and it wasn't recognized on Windows. It did say on the fine print. I only tested this on Mac. So okay, either I Google up what the hell is a Docker machine and why doesn't it work on Windows, and enter that rabbit hole, or I could just power up my Mac Mini and try to run it there, because it should, like, Mac is supposedly to be compatible with Linux, so maybe you can just compile the project of F3 and not have to deal with the whole Docker mess. So I boot up the Mac, and I try to install using port install F3, and my port is out of date, as it always is whenever I try to use the Mac for anything. So I spend a few hours trying to, well, no, it wasn't hours, like half an hour. I give up pretty quickly. Trying to update the port, and there's always some error, and something doesn't upgrade properly. There's some dependency error always happening. I knew it was a bad idea to use port. I knew it was an idea to go Mac, and then I read on the fine print that even if you are on Mac, you still have to use Docker. I don't want to be installing Docker on the Mac. So I go back to Windows, and I just decide to install VirtualBox instead, because VirtualBox supposedly has COM thing. And I could just pretend that I'm on a Linux machine, have access to my USB ports, and do stuff as if I was in a real Linux machine. Sounds great. Install VirtualBox, get the latest Ubuntu image, try to fiddle around, try to figure out how to create a new box. I would assume that VirtualBox allows you to create an operating system by default, especially if it's like Linux, which is open. You don't pay for it. Why don't they just, connect to a list of images and just, but no, apparently you have to download an image and tell it where to install. Anyways, got the latest Ubuntu, try to run it. It boots for a few, minute or two, and then it crashes. Okay, why did it crash? It did give some complaints that it couldn't access the network properly, which I had to select some stuff on the menu, and I have no clue if it worked or not, and that it didn't have the extensions for USB. I definitely need extensions for USB. That's the whole thing that I want to have working. Go back to the VirtualBox site. VirtualBox has an extensions link right below the main VirtualBox download. Why isn't the extensions included on the main thing? It's like an extra megabyte or two. I didn't actually check how big it was. Maybe I have it open here. Let me check real quick. No, I already deleted it. Why isn't it just included? No, extra download. It's just a weird extension file. I double click it and hope for the best. It just installs on VirtualBox. Great. Awesome. So try rerun Ubuntu thing. Still crashes while booting. Try to find another installation. I find a Linux Lite because, let's try to get a lighter version. Maybe it's faster to boot and all that stuff. Okay, so have to rest a little bit getting the image to working. It's somehow different from setting up the other Ubuntu one. Do manage to get it working in the end. Finally, I'm in Linux. It asks me for a login and password. What? It's an image downloaded from the internet. What password do you want me from? So I have to Google the password, and the password is just the name of the site where you downloaded the image from. Why do they make this so complicated? I don't know. So anyways, now I'm finally inside Linux. I just need to run the damn F3. So copy paste the GitHub URL, go to the VirtualBox. Copy paste doesn't work, obviously. So I have to hand type the URL from outside the VirtualBox into the VirtualBox. Download the URL, extract the URL, make the URL, make install the URL, not the URL, but F3 archive itself. We're ready to go. I just need to know what the hell is the name of my USB port command thing. So I go to the list of connected devices. There are nothing connected there, only the CD drive. So, okay, maybe I have to bridge them somehow. Figure out on the VirtualBox menus how to bridge those damn things together. There's an option there to bridge USB, and you can decide which USB you want. Oh, I want the SD card one that is connected. And it gives me this awesome message that says, failed to attach the USB device to the virtual machine. A large number of expletives ensued, which I will not replicate, despite a dear want inside my heart to do so. But I will not do so, because I do want this video to be able to be monetized. So, F3 does not work on VirtualBox, or VirtualBox does not allow the USB to be connected. Do I want to spend the rest of my day trying to figure out why the USB cannot be connected? Maybe not. Maybe I don't give a fuck about F3 anymore. Maybe someday I'll try to get a proper Linux installation instead of VirtualBox. I'll probably have issues with that as well. Linux is kind of prone to those things, like any operating system has its quirks. So let's just try on another SD card, because either it's the whole process that I'm doing or it's the SD card. So let's try to check. I have other SD cards around. They're smaller in size, which was why I was trying to do this on a 32 gigabyte. So I pick a random 16 gigabyte, the one that I've been using for the GoPro, which I use like twice in my life. So I flashed the SD card exactly the same way that I did for the 32 gigabyte thing, and it works on the MiSTer Fusion installs. I unplug it, I replug it, still working, awesome. I update, I unplug it, I replug it, still working, awesome. So it is the SD card. Great. Why couldn't someone just tell me that the SD card is corrupt? Why doesn't Windows say? Why doesn't Windows have an F3 thing? Why doesn't MiSTer recognize that it's corrupt and tell me that this SD card is a piece of shit? Please use another one. I could have lived with that, but no, technology has to be complicated. Anyway, managed to get the 16 gigabyte card. It's currently still doing a larger update, and update all to get like more ROMs and stuff like that installed that is not installed by default. Also FTPing the Amiga archive into it, just finished uploading. Whole 6 gigabytes, 789 megabytes of Amiga stuff. So yeah, that was my day. How was yours? Did you have fun? I also managed to drill a couple of holes in a wall and hang up a cabinet, which was probably the most productive thing I did all day. And I picked up Afonso from daycare, which got me soaking wet because hurricane, I believe it's called Lona, something like that, started hitting Portugal. Right the moment I needed to go out and pick up Afonso. When I arrived back home, being soaking wet, it stops raining. So yeah, have been a great day so far. Hopefully the 16 gigabyte card will be enough to have the entire things that I need to have, including the Amiga collection and the Spectrum connection. I guess those two are the main ones that I want to check out for now with the MiSTer. I also had some issues setting up a controller, but I'll leave that for another video. This is already 22 minutes long. I doubt anyone will read or watch this long, but if you have, thank you for watching the video till the end of the duration of it all. And if you enjoyed the video for any reason, like I'm a funny person feeling very sorry for himself, you can also consider supporting me through patreon.com/psenough. Whatever you can donate would be highly appreciated in ongoing efforts to document my journey through these hard, perilous times that include figuring out how to copy an 8 gigabyte SD card to a 32 gigabyte SD card to run on the MiSTer. See you next video. Bye bye everyone. Take care.